Winning Plays Podcast is back, and we're here to complete the home and home series for this week. My name is Brian Robb, Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston, and even if we weren't doing a home and home here, Chris, we had to bring it back because the avalanche of Robb Williams positivity news since we last talked earlier this week has been fast and furious. It's coming from all angles right now.
Is he playing tonight against Indiana? Like, it's truly remarkable. Like it's been, I mean, even for me, it's been quite the roller coaster. And I told you, I was a little bit hesitant to just, even before we knew about the surgery, I was on the fence. I'm glad you got me back because you caught me at probably my low moment. We can come back to the high. Obviously, Woes said on his pod yesterday that there's a chance he'll come back within inside of 4 weeks. And like, this isn't a surprise. And people that have had this injury, there's been guys that have come back super quick. And is that the right path? I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I'm leaning on the Celtics here to steer their players in the right way. Now, part of me is hesitant because of the Celtics injury history. And I think I am fearful of sacrificing anything long-term with Robb. But you heard Brad Stevens on the radio this morning. He says Robb's long-term health was, as he put it, numero uno. So as long as they're sports science and everybody is on board with it, then far be it from me to get in the way, because after watching that Miami game, I would like Robb Williams back on the court as quick as possible. As if, you know, again, I always tell this to people, I don't root for the team because I'm from here or because I want to see them do good. It's good for business. So I hope that Robb gets back out there. They're a lot more fun to watch when he's out there. And like as long as it is prudent and you're not rushing him into a dangerous situation, let's do this. Get him back out there.
And so when you look at this just injury situation, I mean, you tear your meniscus. Obviously, there's like 1,000 different ways to tear your meniscus based on the wide variety of timelines. With, I think you look at like Colin Sexton, something like that. You know, obviously, if you have it repaired, if you go the full, well, like even if you get the surgery, you're not guaranteed to come back even within 3 or 4 months. And then you have something like this, which seems to be as minor as possible. And I guess the question is, and you already you touched on it there, is,
well, give me how do you feel about all this? Are you like,
well, I mean, I think
my one hesitation is if point guards like Colin Sexton need to get it repaired with hopes of no issues down the road, is it okay that I'm just slightly, and again, not a doctor, just all Googling, me and WebMD hanging out every night. Am I okay to be slightly scared that Robb's health isn't numero uno by going this route, unless, the other part of it is the player. Like if Robb is on board with it, who are we to suggest that it's not? But the way he plays and the wear and tear on his knees is just what leaves me slightly hesitant to be like, yes, this is the most awesome path possible, even though I want him back as quick as possible.
Right. I based on how everyone's talking about it, I just think it was a situation where this was the simplest and the solution that just made the most sense in terms of, we're not going to repair and do the full blown thing if we don't have to, if that's just something that even, I think it's a situation where and no matter what point of the year was, this would have been how they go about it. And so from my standpoint, if they're at that standpoint where it's 4 to 6 weeks, obviously things seem to have gone really well in surgery. I was actually hearing from a couple of different people behind the scenes before we talked like, hey, this actually looked, pretty good. What that actually means when you deal with someone who's had a wide range of durability issues over the course of his career in Robb Williams, and how the team actually handles that now when he's on this timeline back is going to be the fascinating thing. But there's no question now. I have no concerns in terms of this wasn't the right thing to do for Robb. I think this is a situation where medically and obviously it works well for them in terms of the current timeline, that this is how they went.
Yeah, and again, we don't have enough information to make a full-blown. I do not have enough education, and I do not have enough information. So the bits and pieces that they tell us, with Brad saying today that it was just a small, flat piece or whatever, like a flap, and so you cut that little flap out, and off you go. Now, the one thing I'll say is it's the way it's been explained to me is it's almost like a rubber band, right? Like your meniscus just kind of holds everything together there. And so when it snaps completely, you got to repair it. So the fact that they can do the removal, there's still strength there. Now, what happens with that spot? Does it become arthritic, as we've seen happen with other players? There's all sorts of things that we can sit here and stress about. in the short term, we don't have to worry about that because it's not probably going to affect him. It's just going to be getting him, like letting that heal up for probably 3 to 4 weeks here and then turn him loose as he ramps back up. But the fact that he was 1 day off of surgery back in the meeting room and doing all that is wild to me. And, it is certainly an encouraging sign for anyone who just wants this team to do well in the postseason. And so, again, and maybe if I hadn't just watched Dwayne Dedman like feast on the Celtics for an entire quarter, I'd feel differently about this. But yeah, like they need Robb, and Theis can be as great as he wants to be, and Grant Williams can make as many corner threes as he wants. But Robb is pivotal to whatever comes this season.
Well, to your point on the ladder there, Grant Williams' corner threes have not been hot lately.
Nope.
Ever since, I don't know if it's like ever since the Batman talk, it just has not been good for Grant.
No, did you think he jinxed himself?
The Batman jinx, I don't know. We're not going to go there yet. It hasn't been long enough, but I think it was John Schumann tweeted out today in terms of post All-Star break 3-point shooting drop off. I think Grant is on the top of that list in terms
did Grant give all his superpowers to Peyton?
Oof.
In terms of like Batman gave Robin or Robin became Batman. I don't know. Like, I feel like there was a transition of bench. There was only so much bench shooting power the Boston Celtics had. Like, it's as if you're doing create a team on NBA 2K and you can only give like 100 points worth of it. And in order to give one guy a lot, you have to take away from another. And so the Celtics just decided that Peyton Pritchard was more important to the mix, and not knowing that Rob Williams would injure himself. And now they can't undo it.
So here's what happened, I think. So Grant gave it to Peyton, but Peyton lost it in Toronto. He gave it to Sam Hauser. But then the problem is Hauser not getting on the floor now. So now now you had slumps from other parts of the bench. Or maybe Theis hit a 3 there. Maybe Theis has it right now. He was 6-6 from the field.
And meanwhile, Derek White is sitting there like, can someone give me some TD power?
Derek White's like, I got to be here for 4 months to get this. Damn it. Yeah, so it's a situation where you're going to get something. I mean, I thought Horford and Theis played very well that game. The problem is it's just 2 guys now, and the Heat have a lot of other good guys on the bench and in the starting 5. So that wasn't enough to take away from the fact that the rest of the Celtics roster shot like 29% from 3 for that game. And I mean, we don't need to get into that game much now, but yeah, it's clear. Yeah, you could use having another valuable big in this circumstance, certainly one that can punish teams against a zone like Robb can with the lob threat. Certainly is going to come into play, not just against Miami, but against any good defense going forward.
I think my favorite play from that game was who lobbed it to Theis, where he almost fell on his face.
Yeah. Maybe Jalen. I'll look it up.
Yeah, that's when I said, oh, they don't realize that they don't have Robb yet.
Yeah.
Like that Theis at whatever 31 years old cannot get anywhere near as high as Robert Williams, and that's just going to be part of what you have to live with. But hey, shout out! Like I you know what, I don't like taking victory laps. I love taking victory laps. I was excited when the Celtics got Theis because, I didn't think this was going to be obviously the scenario that would play out, and certainly it's not as dire as it seemed even a couple of days ago. But what a luxury to have someone that you can plug in, because otherwise we'd have Ennis Freedom out there trying to plug minutes, and you want to talk about not feeling great going into the playoffs. That was the scenario you're looking at. And so hopefully they don't have to break glass on Luke Cornett or Juwan Morgan or whoever here, but having Theis even if his skill set has eroded slightly since we last saw him in the playoffs here, it's a luxury and someone they're going to probably need to lean on heavily, especially because who knows what happens with Al and age and opponent.
No question about it. Between Horford and Rob Williams, there was going to be a stretch at some point where you're going to need someone you can rely on. And Theis, he's fresh. All that bench time, the OKC Horford plan in Houston, that wasn't their plan. Obviously, with him, he just fell out of the rotation, but that's very valuable for a guy that's entering his 30s closely here and knows the system. And I don't know, if you're getting the bubble version of Theis, that's not
bubble version of everyone was the upper levels of all their potentials, except Gordon Hayward's foot.
Exactly. And but even if you look at the advanced stats for Theis right now, when he's been in Boston, it's pretty damn good across the board.
Yeah, they're
And
juiced though. I mean, all those numbers.
they're
juiced. Like Derek
that's
White
true.
still has like Derek White has amazing numbers right now, but he just can't make a 3-pointer when it really, really matters. So like, I mean, these are all little things to nitpick about. In general, I'm not overly worked up, but yeah, I think it's huge that they've got these guys in this situation. I like I said, I don't like taking victory laps. I love them, so I don't want to take a victory lap on this. But last weekend, so at the height of their oh my God, the Celtics are going to the NBA Finals. I tried to go the other way and I said, here are 4 things that concern me about this team. Now, mind you, this was before Robb got hurt. Number 1 was health. And dude goes out and tears his minutes. So that's on me. I'm blaming myself on that one. Number 2 was crunch time offense. And okay, so 3 was Derek White, shooting and making shots when it matters, because I think it's going to be pivotal down the stretch. And 4 is just how Ime performs in the postseason, because as much as I do think he's in the coach of the year conversation, it's just a different beast in the postseason. So we can't even get to 4 yet. 3, I'm willing to relent, like whatever. Like Derek White has been very good. I just want to see him. He had that 3-pointer when they really needed it in the final minutes against Miami. Didn't drop, but he did have one. I think about 4.5 minutes to go. So okay, good and bad. But number 2, like this is the one that's keeping me up right now. How are we feeling? Because there's like 2 different collections of Celtics fans right now. There's one that's like, if Jalen doesn't smoke a bunch of bunnies, like the Celtics are okay. They win that game against Miami. And then there's the bucket that I'm probably in, which is even amid all this stretch since January 6th, their offensive rating in crunch time is 89. And I'm scared to death that when playoff games are tight and it matters, that this team won't be able to score.
It's funny you bring up that number, because this was just asked in the mailbag at Mass Live that just went up hours ago here. And yeah, they just haven't played close games during this 24-6 stretch. And I think during that, they're probably 3-3 in those close games. They beat the quality one that everyone remembers is the Nets. And then they had a couple like come from behind, gritty wins against Denver, against Charlotte early on at home. Like nothing.
One was against Chicago, where Chicago just totally crapped.
Oh yeah, so that was even before things really turned. You're right. That was probably their most impressive one, when Chicago completely fell apart in the early part of January there. But lately, you fell apart against the Pistons at the end of the winning streak. You fell apart against the Mavericks. When you had it.
KG right there.
KG right there with the KG buzz all afternoon. And now you do it against Miami. And I think 2 and 3 on your list are related here, because White is supposed to be, your outlet, your 5th option in that scenario there. If he's not hitting shots, we know what Smart is right now in those situations. He's going to take those shots if they're there. He's been much better at lately, but that's just going to be a volatile situation all year long. And so, and I think now with just Robb out of the picture for those lineups, it's just teams are going to pack the paint more than ever now on Tim, because it's like, you don't have to worry about Robb swooping in for the lob or just on the offensive glass. And so it's just going to make those challenges with that crunch time offense now even tougher. And I don't know they just get sped up. It looks better. It looks like they've made progress on it, but they're still just not crisp in those moments. And I don't know whether that's the byproduct of other defenses tightening up, or just the fact that they, have this track record of getting a little, rattled in those moments for the last couple of years here.
And that's why I hope almost that the last 5 games are close late, and because like they just need more experience with it. There's nothing that takes the place of repetition. And I think when the Ringer made that article, they said there's no correlation between how you're playing in crunch time at the start of the year and how you finish, because it's just a matter of how you are in that moment. And I think we were all hopeful that, based on the way the Celtics have played, that maybe some of those things were just in the past, and that this was going to be a new low crunch time team. But as you said, like nothing about the data for even the last 6 weeks, as opposed to like the 10, has been encouraging. And so it is like, it's not necessarily like bad habits. It's just they totally get away from what works for the start of the games and the ball movement. I mean, their effective field goal percentage is 30th in the NBA in that stretch. Their assist percentage is higher than I would have thought in crunch time. Like I would have thought it was 0 based on the way they go devolve to ISO, but they do move it at times. Like the other night, my initial gut reaction was, okay, they just missed some shots at the rim. But part of me says also, like, should Tatum have been more aggressive in that point? But then he got the charge trying to be aggressive. So I think he's making the right passes. you just have to trust that Marcus and Dirk are going to make those shots. And, in this game, at least they didn't, but it's going to come down to all of them. They've got to shoot better in those instances, right? You got to work harder for a drive opportunity. And so I hope if Ime spends any amount of whatever limited practice time they have, they have a whole bunch of time off in that Chicago-Milwaukee stretch, while they're just be kind of hanging out at Soldiers Field or whatever in Chicago and riding it out United Center. I hope that if they just get together, that crunch time offense is the focus. And hey, it's winning games by 20 is fun because you don't have to get into that situation. But let's focus on what we do in those instances. Where are our outlets? Where can Jason Tatum know for sure that he can throw out of a double team and you're going to be there? And, you live with the make miss at times, but how do you put yourself in the best position to thrive in those instances? Because, I walked away from that Miami game just a little bit it's still there. It's still lingering and it's magnified when you don't have Robb.
It really is. I mean, maybe just, you just say, okay, guys, we're going to spend all afternoon watching 2015, 2016 Spurs. Tapes.
How about they spend just go watch, can we go watch a Phoenix Suns game?
Yeah, no, that worked too.
I mean,
that worked too.
Isn't it? It's insane. The Phoenix Suns are the greatest crunch time team in the history of the NBA. If it's even relatively close, the other team should just be we're out of here. They're just too good, which makes Boston beating them back, back on December 31st all the more crazy. But I just hope they figure out a way to tighten up in those instances. I can't explain it. It's just for whatever reason, it's their bugaboo right now, and they need to figure it out.
The balance. I think the key there, and it's hard just to teach a team this. They've come a long way over the course of the season in this, but it's another thing to do in these moments. It's the patience factor of okay, you make the first pass, you drive, they collapse on you. Okay, you have to make the outlet, and then you kick again, and you drive, and you kick again, and you just don't see those long progressions a lot in the last 4 or 5 minutes of these games, period, with this group in these tight scenarios. And so that's something where it's a lot harder to do in those moments because the defense reaction time is better and those windows are even tighter. But that's what's going to separate a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals probably versus, a disappointing, out in round 2 or even round run if you get the wrong draw.
The only other thing I'll add here is that why I think this matters, missing Robb in crunch time, is I haven't been courtside a whole lot for the last 2 years, right? Pandemic, it's been crazy. I've just been in a studio. I've been over at the Garden a handful of times, but for the last week, I've gotten the chance to be up close for a lot. And one of the things that stood out, especially in that Minnesota game, was Robb gets a rebound. And I mean, he plays hot potato all the time, but he wants to move that ball immediately. Mm-hmm. And the Celtics get in transition, and Marcus has been so good at that. And they don't let teams get set in those instances. Whereas in crunch time, it just feels whoever's getting the rebound, all of a sudden it's slow up the court, and it's the Dennis Schroeder effect all over again, where it's hard to get going with 14 on the clock and to have multiple drives and multiple kicks. And so I do hope that they just kind of learn that too, to speed it up a little bit in those instances. And then the defense just has to be better. For whatever reason, when the Celtics offense bogs down, the defense doesn't play to a crisp level. It doesn't get back. All of a sudden, Kyle Lowry's picking it apart. Jimmy Butler's getting the spots. And so if your offense is not going to be crisp in those moments, your defense has to be even better. So I hope that Ime is able to hammer home those points with those guys.
How do you handle Robb recovery-wise? Assuming, do you bring him back if he can only play 10 or 15 minutes? And say it's the end of the first round, and he's cleared for Game 5, and it's a 2-2 series. Do you push it there, get him back on the floor for the juice, or do you say this might be putting him in a pretty tough spot here? Let's just.
Your better example would have been what if it's Game 6 in Toronto, and then we have some questions.
And yes,
but not to go down that wormhole, but I do think. I would prefer they try to get through round 1 before they have to break glass on Robb. I think 4 weeks from the time of the injury puts you right about even the move up date for round 2 of the playoffs. And I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you can just turn him loose and full, that there's no hesitation. Maybe there's some 25-minute cap, but even then, Robb so rarely ascends to like 35 minutes. I guess more so this year, but you could probably get by with 25 minutes of Robb starting halves and closing games, whatever the case may be. But I do worry about, if you're treading cautiously with that minutes, then your rotations get all thrown off. And so I would think I would say unless absolutely necessary, try to get through that first round without him, and then get that juice when you're going to need it, when it's Embiid or Giannis on the other side, or whoever even if it's the Heat again. But really shouldn't have to break glass on Bulls or Raptors or Cleveland or whatever.
The fact that Cleveland is like I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs now. I mean, they're going to be in the play-in, but like you look at them right now,
they might lose the play-in.
It's entirely possible that they lose to because the Hornets. Like I take the Hornets or the Hawks over them in the
100%
in that game. If and I don't know, one of those teams could even they're all tied for the 8th spot right now, so they could conceivably one of them could overtake the Nets in that 7-8 spot, which would be even more fascinating if they're in a true elimination scenario.
Where should the Celtics land? The projections are pretty heavy on 3 and 4 right now. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I mean, I still think. I mean, I'm still of the mind of you avoid Kevin Durant if it's convenient, and so yeah, if they beat the Heat the other night, then it's like okay, you can still go for one because that's still a realistic possibility.
Now, 9% chance at one.
Yeah, now you're probably gonna have to win out to get a decent chance at one, and you've got a pretty rough schedule to do that with the Chicago Milwaukee back-to-back. So
will the Grizzlies have anything to play for? I haven't even started thinking about this.
No, so they're they're totally locked. That game, that's the perfect game for the Celtics in terms of if they want to win it, they can win it. If they want to lose it, sit everyone, and then the Grizzlies
don't play Sam Hauser.
Yeah, go play
increased 3-point bar.
I tell you what, get Malik Fitz out there,
Stauskas
Ryan out there. I know these poor guys. These poor guys got that up to Toronto. I'm like, all right, we're gonna see a couple of these guys. No, Ime was 8, and even in that game, Luke Cornett would have the game of his life. He can only get on the floor for 15 minutes of that game. I was talking to someone after that game. They were like, yeah, if Cornett probably plays a few more minutes over Theis in that game, they probably win because he was grabbing every single offensive rebound on the board in those stints he was in there. So that'll be funny to look at that in hindsight. But yeah, so we'll see if Ime will call off the dogs and we'll probably still be playing Derek White and Grant Williams 40 minutes in those games. But that'll be it does line up them for the perfectly where they can. That's the true way where they can whatever they want to do that they should be able to do it against Memphis.
Exactly, and that's why you've been on this. You've said do your work now and kind of figure it out. Well, they didn't do their work against Miami. You've sort of pinned yourself probably to 3-4. No one wants to be 2, but someone's got to end up there. So Milwaukee, maybe they push and try to get 1 and push Miami to 2, which will be interesting when the Celtics go up to Milwaukee. Will Milwaukee be playing for 1? I don't know. So it's going to be fascinating to watch though. And I do wish again, if it hadn't been for the Robb injury, I'd be all on the just go for it, push hard, but things got more difficult now. And I think the bigger priority over the final 5 is just figuring out how this works, rotations. I'm assuming Ime sort of sounded like he was hinting that they were going to go Al and Theis tonight to start, right? I wonder,
why not?
Yeah,
when Grant's in this funk, and
might as well, right?
You might as well just to see, especially if you're going to play a team like Chicago or where you could, on the off chance you play Cleveland, you're probably not going to see them, yeah, that's something where you have to, if Theis can at least give you that, the lob threat and play there a little bit much more so obviously than Grant can, and now sitting some more threes now where teams have to respect him out there, that might be the way you unlock your offense. Defensively with those 2 guys up there, we'll see. But you might, again, certainly against a team like the Pacers, you might as well look at it.
Which is crazy, right? Because it goes back to, we've been joking about this. How long did we scream that they need to play Grant with the starters for that was for Al, but right. And now we're sitting here saying maybe they audible at the end of the year and don't even have Grant in the starters. Well, hey, things get wonky, and we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I just want to see them.
The question for you rotating though, how do you, if you start Theis and Al?
Yeah, how do you
handle that? So does Theis have to play 9 minutes to start the game. Or I guess what you do is you downsize immediately with the second unit there.
Yeah.
Too.
Then maybe that's fine. Maybe there's the matchup allows you to play Tatum as the 5 or 4 and you get away with it. Yeah, now you're saying it, like, yeah, it's tough. Like, what are you doing? I think you got to start Grant and probably maybe Theis is an early roll in.
Yeah.
Theis and Derek White come in early, and then you go back with maybe Theis and Grant, and I don't know. But yeah. It's tough to fill those 5 minutes if you start both Theis and Al.
And yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I would hope that Nesmith starts kind of figuring into this after he had the good game Monday, and then we can see him like
am I crazy? Like, I wrote this. I said it's hard for me to quibble with an 8-man rotation, again, a playoff caliber game. But Nesmith just had his best friggin' game of his career, at least defensive wise. And I don't know. I think you'd lose a little bit of that momentum at a time when, whatever. Like I'd rather figure out if you can lean on him in a playoff series than you like ride your horses out. So yeah, I hope he gets a chance here against Indiana and Chicago, and like just again to figure it out, and I'll knock on every piece of wood around here, but in case there's another injury, and like if they had another wing injury, like he becomes vital to them. So yeah, plenty to still figure out over 9 days and 5 games to the finish line here.
It is. So we'll see it this weekend. We'll see if these guys, Nesmith, Hauser, these guys got a shot against some inferior teams.
Hauser should get a shot. That thing is buttery smooth. Goes to the moon. Just makes a different sound coming through the net. It's truly remarkable. Like when he launches that thing, and it was funny to hear me asked about it yesterday. Like because he just sends it into planetary orbit, and there's the net. Just beautiful.
And against the Indiana Pacers, there should be a lot of those shots available. So that is something to watch out there for. But all right, Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. Make sure you're checking out Celtics Talk podcasts a couple times a week there as well, going through. Chris, you'll be in the garden.
Check out my panic episode with Robb. It would be Robb earlier this week.
That's right, panic episode.
I was a real lather.
Exactly. You can go back to back here. It'll be the best hour of your week going those 2 back to back from lows to highs. But in the meantime, rate, review, subscribe, Winning Plays Pod. Thanks for listening as always, and we will talk to you guys next week.